Hello there guys, welcome to another video where we'll be discussing the latest updates and developments. Now, if you cast your mind back to 2016 when Hillary Clinton warned that Donald Trump's reckless behavior online could spark a major conflict, while she didn't nail the exact scenario, she wasn't far off, to be honest. Now, Trump may not have started a war with his unhinged social media rants, but he certainly derailed progress towards actually ending one. Now, his latest meltdown on Truth Social just hours before his scheduled meeting with Zelensky and several key European leaders, his erratic posts are doing real damage. They're actually sabotaging diplomatic efforts and throwing a potential peace agreement into chaos by lashing out at Zelensky, and he's actually behaving completely unhinged. We're going to break it all down for you in this video, but first, a quick ask as usual. If you're enjoying the content, please do drop a like on the video, and if you already haven't subscribed yet, hitting that button really helps us out and what we do here. Now, before diving into Trump's wild rant about Zelensky, we need to take a step back and also look at another unhinged post he made. This one's actually targeting Senator Chris Murphy. And to understand that, we've got to start with Murphy's recent pointed criticism of Trump.
Initially said he wanted a ceasefire agreement. Now he wants a broader peace deal. Secretary Rubio defending that approach, basically saying the Russians wouldn't agree to a ceasefire. Do you think that it's the right strategy to now focus on that broader peace deal?
That meeting was a disaster. It was an embarrassment for the United States. It was a failure. Putin got everything he wanted. I mean, first of all, he wanted that photo op, right? He wanted to be absolved of his war crimes in front of the world. He was invited to the United States. War criminals are not normally invited to the United States of America. He is intentionally murdering civilians. He's kidnapping children. And now he got to stand next to the president of the United States, legitimized in the view of the world. Second, he didn't have to give up anything, nothing. Right? President Trump said he wanted a ceasefire. It appears the ceasefire wasn't even seriously discussed. And then third, there's no consequences. Trump said, if I don't get a ceasefire, Putin's going to pay a price. And then he walked out of that meeting saying, I didn't get a ceasefire, I didn't get a peace deal, and I'm not even considering sanctions. You heard Secretary Rubio downplay sanctions. And so Putin walks away with his photo op with zero commitments made and zero consequences. What a great day for Russia.
As you'd expect, Senator Murphy's scathing takedown hit Trump where it hurts, calling out the obvious truth behind his bizarre meeting with Putin. It wasn't diplomacy, it was a shameless photo op designed to help Putin launder his war crimes through the lens of legitimacy, while Trump played dress up as a tough guy. Now, the reality is he came off looking small, desperate, and utterly spineless, because that's who he really is. And of course, that kind of truth doesn't sit well with someone thin-skinned as Trump. So like clockwork, he launched into yet another late-night tantrum on Truth Social, kicking off with a rant aimed straight at Senator Chris Murphy. The very unattractive senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, said, Putin got everything that he wanted. Actually, nobody got anything too soon, but getting close. Murphy is a lightweight who thinks it made the Russian president look good in coming to America. Actually, it was very hard for President Putin to do so. This war can be ended now, but stupid people like Chris Murphy, John Bolton and others make it much harder to do so. Right, but how is this hard for Putin? Trump conveniently skips that detail, probably because there's no real answer. Now, the irony of him name-dropping John Bolton, that's rich, isn't it? Bolton was actually one of the loudest voices pointing out just how sluggish, disoriented, and completely out of his depth Trump looked during his summit with Putin. It was actually embarrassing. And now, with real leaders, actual grown-ups, set to arrive in Washington tomorrow, as confirmed by several major European governments, Trump is clearly spiraling. The wave of competence heading into town seems to have triggered yet another social media meltdown. So before we get into Trump's latest online breakdown, let's actually start with the breaking news that's likely sent him over the edge. Trump tells Zelensky to give up Crimea and never join NATO ahead of White House talks. European leaders will join Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House as he meets with US President Donald Trump this afternoon. Trump said Zelensky must agree to some of Russia's conditions, including that Ukraine cede Crimea and agree never to join NATO for that war to end. European leaders are headed to Washington, clearly aiming to keep Donald Trump from completely derailing what could be a critical diplomatic breakthrough. Something is already showing every sign of sabotaging, and honestly, nobody should be shocked. Now, Trump isn't even waiting for the meeting to start. He's already launching attacks on President Zelensky and making unhinged, reckless declarations that are putting the entire deal at risk. It's textbook Trump, chaos, ego and destruction, and we've got the evidence to prove it right here. Trump also goes on to say President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, or he can continue to fight. Remember how it started, no getting back of Obama giving Crimea 12 years ago without a shot being fired, and no going into NATO by Ukraine. Some things never change. Fake news will stay that it's a big loss for President Trump to host so many great European leaders at a beautiful White House. Actually, it's a great honor for America. President DJT. Donald Trump is already folding and fast. This is the same guy who constantly brags that he holds all the cards when pushing reckless, economically damaging tariffs. But when it comes to our allies like Ukraine, his true priorities become painfully clear. Now just look at the stark contrast. When he talks tariff, it's all chest-thumping bluster. We're putting pressure on them and so on and so forth. They've taken out advantage of us. We'll force them to give in. But when the topic shifts to Putin, suddenly Trump and his inner circle act like helpless bystanders. They downplays Russia's aggression, shrug off Crimea, and act like Ukraine joining NATO is some impossible fantasy. And now, in typical fashion, Trump is throwing away any diplomatic leverage he might have had. Not in some strategic back channel, but in an unhinged Truth Social rant. Whether it's ignorance or something far worse, a behind-the-scenes deal that favours Putin and leaves Ukraine out in the cold, it's clear he's not actually operating in America's or Ukraine's interest. Just remember that smug grin Putin had at that infamous summit. Whatever was discussed then might be haunting to Trump now because he seems terrified to even acknowledge it. No surprise his staff walked out of their recent meeting looking absolutely rattled. They know just how weak and compromised he is. Trump is putting on a show, pretending to project strength in Washington, but the fact is he's falling apart, and Republican Jamie Raskin wasn't afraid to say it out loud.
America saw a real emergency in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. That's what a real emergency looks like, an insurrectionary riot against the Capitol of the United States where 140 police officers were wounded. There's nothing like that in D.C. That's why Donald Trump keeps talking about the graffiti, or he talks about the blight of homelessness. What are all those National Guard officers doing other than participating in a completely manufactured crisis? The real public relations emergency was, of course, the Epstein file, and Donald Trump moving to try to change the subject as quickly as possible. So let's hope this doesn't escalate into real problems because of the provocation organized by Donald Trump. In any event, even if there were a real emergency, Donald Trump doesn't have the power to take over the Metropolitan Police Department. He has the power under the Home Rule Act only of directing the mayor of D.C. to give police services in order to provide particular federal protection in the event of something like a riot or, an attack on a foreign dignitary. He could request some kind of police escort. But basically, these people don't really know what they're doing there, and they don't have any specific function. And as the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department put it, that's a very dangerous thing to be introducing that kind of confusion and chaos into the line of command.
Congressman, what do you make of these Republican governors sending additional troops into D.C. to be part of the Trump administration's takeover there? I mean, this means for the people who are deployed to do this, leaving their state, leaving their families, their day-to-day lives for this purpose. Are members of our military, to your knowledge, are they disturbed by any of this, uncomfortable with their service being used in this way on our soil?
Well, certainly the members of the D.C. National Guard, who are directly under the control of the president, despite Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton legislation to try to remove it from the president and give it to D.C. But those people are put in an uncomfortable position, but at least there's a kind of friendliness about them. When it started, people were taking pictures with them. They were just hanging out at the Washington Monument. They're not interested in provoking any kind of confrontation. But the National Guardsmen coming in from West Virginia and South Carolina and Ohio, who knows what their orders are and who knows what their attitude is coming into the nation's capital. So, this is a moment to de-escalate as quickly as possible. I think that the Trump administration recognized that they didn't have the power, nor did they have the expertise to actually run the D.C. Police Department. And it's not quite clear what all of them are doing. But for people in the resistance and in the opposition, it's a very clear boost for teaching America about the need for D.C. statehood. People in Washington for decades now have been demanding the right to be admitted into the Union. It's passed out of the House of Representatives twice when the Democrats were in control. And just like 37 other states that entered the Union from the original 13, this is a case that absolutely warrants admission to the Union. And so Congress must act. It's a simple majority vote in the House, majority vote in the Senate, and to be signed by the president. But that's very much got to be on the agenda of moving democracy forwards instead of moving democracy backwards to some kind of military rule.
Congressman, you've talked about the influx of troops from other different locales, many of whom we are hearing reports will likely be armed, and you've sort of leaned into the notion of needing to de-escalate before things sort of take a bad turn. With your district being as close to D.C. as it is, what are you hearing from your constituents? Is there any concern there about potential takeover of cities like Baltimore? I know it's been floated, but is there any concern that this may spill out from just beyond D.C. and into other locales? What are you hearing from the people you represent?
Well, the president keeps mentioning Baltimore and Oakland and I believe Chicago and Detroit as the next potential targets in this row of dominoes that are supposed to fall with Trump militarization for no apparent overriding purpose. Remember, crime is down in the District of Columbia to a 30-year low. It's down 25 or 30% just in the last 2 or 3 years. And there are similar drops in crime in Baltimore and other big cities.
Now, Donald Trump might be just the most insecure and pitiful figure in American public life, and deep down he probably knows it better than anyone. But for those who still haven't caught on, don't worry, I'll be here calling it out day in and day out, right here on this channel. If you want to help keep that going, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. And if you've made it to the end, also please drop a blue heart in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.